Hello. Welcome to Moving Through Menopause. I'm Philippa, and today I've got a wonderful guest. Leslie Kenny is joining me. And Leslie's the founder of Oxford Healthspan and the co-founder of the Oxford Longevity Project. Now, this sounds like it's right up my street, Leslie, I must say.
I'm glad to hear that. Then we'll have a great conversation.
I'm really looking forward to that. So we are going to be learning how to biohack your way through midlife and menopause. And, you know, we hear those words used quite a bit today, but this is something that I think I really want to kind of get my head around. The things that we can do to optimize our health moving forwards with the passage of time, because we're on this roller coaster. There's no getting off. And so let's do whatever we can to be fit and healthy for as long as possible. That's what I say. So I really appreciate your likes and shares. Please follow the Moving Through Menopause podcast on Apple Podcasts to help you to master this menopause transition and the rest of your life. So now to our topic for today. Leslie, thank you so much for coming along and having a chat.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to diving into this topic. I've called it Biohacking Midlife and Menopause, and we may drift off at some point that topic. But first, I'd love to know a little bit more about you.
Well, first and foremost, I'm a patient or a former patient, and one who wanted to channel her anger at having been told that there was nothing I could do to improve my condition or change my outcome. And she wanted to channel that into something productive. And that's where the Oxford Longevity Project came from, a desire to share knowledge with people that make sure that that was actionable knowledge that people could take advantage of now to improve their health outcomes and general sense of well-being. And Oxford Healthspan was born out of a desire to make products that are not patentable, but are just as effective in some cases as patented products at improving health. Wanted to help shepherd those products to market so that other individuals would be able to gain access to them. Because one of the big problems is that many products don't make it to market unless they have a patent, but they might be inferior to a food-derived product, but that can't be patented, and therefore there's never any marketing money that goes behind it. So that's a little bit about me.
So do you mind sharing what precisely health problems you were experiencing? Is that something you're willing to?
Yeah, of course. So at age 39, I was in 2004, and age 39 is the same age at which my father died. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and lupus. And I was given a big brown box full of syringes with immune suppressants so that my immune system could be stopped from destroying my joints. And I was told that the lupus was so bad that it looked like I had cancer, and I was fighting the cancer, but I was actually destroying my tissues. There was no cancer. It was just my immune system acted as if there was and was going after itself. When I asked what could be done about the lupus, I was told that there was no treatment, nor was there any cure. And that I would just have to accept this fact. Unfortunately, at the time, I was undergoing IVF treatment. Now, I know we both used to live in the state of Colorado, and the Center for Disease Control in the United States actually ranks all of the states and all of the IVF clinics in the US by success rates. And Colorado has one of the best success rates. And part of the reasons why is because they're very aggressive when it comes to treatments. And so I had been told that I had to do, this was my 5th IVF, I had to do donor egg treatment. And as I'm half Taiwanese, half Caucasian, so half Asian, half Caucasian, I had to line up a donor for this IVF treatment. And it's actually not easy to find someone who's sort of ethnically like me. So when I said, when the doctor told me about these, these diagnoses, I just said, are you sure about this? Are you sure the test was correct? And this is so inconvenient because I'm doing my 5th IVF and you don't understand how hard it is to line up donor eggs like this. Not an easy thing. Plus, I also had an acupuncturist, who would accompany when the embryo was put back into me. I mean, just the whole 9 yards. And she just looked at me and she said, I wouldn't do that IVF round. You have a good 5 years left.
Oh my goodness.
That's sort of a conversation stopping comment. And I think I was already trying to take on board what lupus was because I'd never heard of it before. But that was something quite central to my identity at the time. I was 39. I think that those of us women who have delayed our families, we want to still believe that we can control the outcome. And we already feel that our bodies may have betrayed us because it hasn't happened naturally. And we're having to resort to IUI or IVF. And here this doctor was telling me not only did my body, betray me in terms of fertility, but here it was betraying me and fighting against my own tissues. So I left that meeting feeling pretty shattered. But I did have the presence of mind to say, may I test again? Can we test again to make sure? I think Americans like second opinions quite a lot. And as she said, it's your insurance. Sure, why not? So I vowed to leave and do as much research as I could. And it was when I discovered that both lupus and rheumatoid arthritis have inflammation at their root that I began to delve into diet. Now, it was something I'd specifically asked my doctor at the time, is there anything I can do to change this? What about my diet? I think a lot of patients think this. What about my diet, doc? I'm doing this every day, multiple times in the day. What I'm putting into me, could it have an effect? And she said, no, there's no link. There's nothing you can do. And so when I discovered this inflammatory link, I saw that there could also be a dietary link, and started taking out sugar, which is highly inflammatory, took out dairy, took out gluten, took out all the nightshades. And I didn't know that things like tomatoes were difficult for me. I could feel it in my joints. So tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, aubergine, and zucchini, got rid of all of those. And at the same time, added in things that were anti-inflammatory, like omega-3 fatty acids, extra virgin olive oil, of course, no seed oils. And I did yet more research through forums. At that time, the internet wasn't as developed as it is today. And there were these patient forums. And someone mentioned intravenous immunoglobulin, and I started to look into it. And I could see that some patients who had rheumatoid arthritis and lupus had been treated with this intravenous immunoglobulin. It's a transfusion, and they had gone into remission. So I found a doctor and said, an immunologist said, may I have this? And got 2 rounds. They were $12,000 each, 4 hours of my time each. And when I went back for my second test, within 6 months, I was in remission, complete remission.
Wow.
And when the doctor said, she looked at my file and she said, well, look at that. you don't have lupus anymore. And the penny dropped, and I just thought, I can't believe it. I mean, this is, of course, you can't insult a doctor, right? So I said, do you want to know what I did? And she said, no, that's okay. Because she probably is told 100 times, do you want to know what I did? And she doesn't have the time to engage in this conversation, right? Because she's on the treadmill too. But it really, it angered and disappointed and saddened me. And what made me even more cross was that in the years, the subsequent 2 decades since that diagnosis, I have met so many patients, mostly women, who have had these diseases. I also had Hashimoto's thyroiditis, but Hashimoto's, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, they often come together, those three. And what I noticed was that these patients, they would stop responding to the immune suppressants. They would go from one immune suppressant to another, would be Humira, then would be Enbrel, then these wouldn't work anymore. Then they'd have to go into methotrexate, which is a chemotherapy drug. Once you're on a chemo drug like that, it's very bad for your ovaries.
Your ovaries specifically.
And these women wanted to get pregnant. And I didn't know what to tell them. I just felt terrible. Then I would meet other women who had actually, who were, say, hypothyroid, who did manage to get pregnant. And then around 5 months, they would spontaneously abort.
Oh, wow.
Now, at that point, when you're that far along, you go through labor. Your milk comes in. It's
heartbreaking.
Traumatic. It's heartbreaking. It is an experience a woman never forgets.
No.
And so that's a whole nother thing. I know you're a hypothyroid patient as well.
Well, I am, and it is. I suppose I think I consider myself lucky that, as far as I'm aware, that's all I've got. But it was that time I turned 40, and that was when I became symptomatic. Who knows if it was grumbling along before then, but certainly around this time in middle life, it's the hormonal picture is changing, and this is a time. Pregnancy is a time when autoimmune conditions can be precipitated, and also around this time of menopause, and there, it does seem that there's hypothyroidism. I can take thyroid medication, but it's interesting because I've never been tested for the antibodies to know whether or not it is that Hashimoto's. And the management might be different under those circumstances. So, it is, my journey is partly about unpicking my own health and very much about helping people to access information. Ooh, excuse me. Hang on a minute. Oh my goodness. We'll start that again. I've got funny shaped ears. It is very much about me helping other people to access information when they're in a predicament, or maybe not. Maybe just it's about aging gracefully, So for us to share our stories and the fact that the first thing that I would think of is, what am I putting into my body? Exposure to environmental toxins. What is going on that I could have the capacity to influence for myself? And it just seems like perfect common sense to me that we would do that, and yet Western medical approaches as sometimes can be lacking in the holistic approach, and so you did a lot of research by the sounds of it, and you took inspiration from the parts of the world where people are living well for longer.
Yes.
And we call those the blue zones. So was that part of your kind of
It
study?
was part of it, because when I every time I injected myself with these immune suppressants, not only did it, sometimes those little diabetic needles go in very easily. You're injecting your abdomen, but sometimes they don't, and it hurts. So, some people say they're squeamish when they do a pinprick blood test. Well, imagine then taking a needle and on the regular having to inject your abdomen and making sure that you're pushing all this liquid in the syringe. And it just felt wrong, because philosophically, having two grandparents who went to medical school in Japan, where the philosophy is about bringing the body into balance, I didn't understand why I would want to suppress my immune system. Surely I would want my immune system to be optimized so that it would know not to be overactive and also not to be underactive. And this was my philosophical problem with the Western approach, which was let's halt I understood the halting of the damage. That is an acute medical response. Okay, let's halt the damage, but then to continue to suppress forever, did that make sense to me? Not at all, because I want an immune system. And I was told by the doctor, it's not a problem to suppress your immune system. You just have to avoid large social gatherings and avoid children who might have infections. And I'm thinking, here I am, I've spent the last 8 years trying to get pregnant, artificially, so I can have children. You're telling me to avoid children? So it's funny how people can say, oh, it's not hard, just avoid large social gatherings. Well, I'm a social person. Maybe if I'd been an introvert, I would have said, fine, happy to become, a hermit, but I wasn't. And so bringing the body, for me, the body wants to come back to its point of balance. It is the point of least friction for the body, but we have got to do our part. Now, we might want to outsource our health to our doctors. That is convenient, right? La, 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 la. I don't know anything about my health. But actually, we have more data points than our medical practitioners do. It's not fair to put the burden on our physicians, the NHS. We have to take some personal responsibility, because we do get data points 24/7. We know if we've had a bad night's sleep. Gee, was it related to the fact that I had 2 glasses of wine before bed? Maybe. Oh, I can't walk uphill anymore. Is that because I'm smoking again, or is it because I'm hypothyroid, right? All my hair is falling out. I can see it on the pillow in the morning. Why is that? Does it have to do with hormonal changes? Are my spermidine levels going down, right? Does it have to do with stress? Did I just have some trauma? Did I experience some trauma and I'm losing it all from that? There are all these data points. And I haven't even talked about, our gut biome indicators, which of course, when we are in the loo, we have a data point there. We don't share it with anyone, do we? Because it's far too intimate and personal. But it is a data point.
God.
Right?
Listen, well, do you know what? I'm laughing because this morning I turned. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't turn to observe. And I said to myself, I congratulated myself. Oh, that's a jolly nice log, right? I mean, and joking apart, this is the inputs and the outputs.
Yes.
It's important.
Yes,
definitely.
Exactly. We can't sweep it under the carpet or just flush it without looking. So these inputs, and it could even be such as, the heel on the back of our feet is getting dry when it never used to be. Why is that? Is it linked to hormones? Or there are white spots on your nails? or the shape of the nails have changed, or they become brittle,
Ridged.
or your
Yeah.
hair started to turn gray.
Yeah.
These are all indications. And yet our
Mm.
doctors, they don't have the time to go through all of this, but we do, because we notice, and especially women notice. And we can take action when we see these things. And for women, we often have a perfect storm around that 39, 40, maybe we'll say 30, age 35 to 45 period. But women who have delayed their pregnancies, who may have had multiple pregnancies, we forget that when the baby is gestating in utero, we're giving it lots of extra thyroid hormone. We are completely responsible for our own thyroid hormone as well as that of babies. Do we think that might cause the thyroid to pack it in and say, you know what, I'm going on sabbatical. I am tired. I've produced, I've been keeping you alive and this baby, and that's it. I've had it. I'm going to the Bahamas. Yeah, it does happen. And what happens to us? Our hair can fall out. We get sluggish. We gain weight. But at exactly the same time, we are also providing the baby with this awkwardly named molecule called spermidine, which is extremely prevalent in breast milk.
Well, you know what, Leslie, you're going to have to unpick this a bit for me, because honestly, I had never heard of spermidine until I read about it in the work that you're doing. And so I'm fascinated to understand a little bit more about this particular life-giving molecule.
Sure. Well, it has been known about since, the 17th century, when a Dutch microbiologist who had invented his own special microscope was casting around his study looking for things that he could look at under this microscope, and thought, okay, well, I'll just take some seminal fluid. Why not? And see. And he noticed that there were some dried crystals, and those, he didn't know what they were for, and he called them spermine. And fast forward a few hundred years later, other crystals were also discovered, and they were called spermidine. Now, these are made from amino acids, so they're part of a group of molecules called polyamines. There are over 13,000 studies, scientific studies on polyamines. So we've known about them for decades. Studies have been done on them. We knew they were around, but we didn't really know why they might be important until work was done on cell renewal and rejuvenation. It's a process that all cells do when we're young, and it's called autophagy or autophagy. It's Greek and it means self-eating, but really a better description would be self-cleaning. So it's like the oven cleaning mode that you have on your oven, and you just need to press it every now and then to get rid of the debris. And our cells do this when we're young, and our tissues, the spermidine that our tissues make and our gut biome makes, and that we take in primarily from plants, all of this spermidine helps our cells rejuvenate. They activate this autophagy. And it's extremely important. When we're young, we have plentiful levels of it. When we're babies, we have the highest amount because we need it to grow. So it's for cell proliferation. But our mothers are giving it to us in massive quantities. We have lots of polyamines in breast milk, and we have fructooligosaccharides in breast milk. That's a resistant starch that actually, it doesn't feed us, but it feeds the gut bugs in our biome that make spermidine. So if we think of breast milk as this kind of magical fluid, life-giving fluid, it's perfect. It has spermidine and spermine there to help the cells grow. Spermine helps with DNA methylation. That's turning genes on, good genes on, bad genes off. And it's helping our gut biome, those colonies of bacteria that we've inherited from our mothers. This is very ancient bacteria. It's not ours. It's not human. This is not human DNA. This is outside of us and lives symbiotically inside of us. Feeds those colonies that actually they manage a little pharmacy inside our bodies. And that something like 90 to 95% of serotonin, one of our happiness hormones, is manufactured in the gut. assuming the nice bacteria that make it are there and doing what they're supposed to do. B vitamins are made in the gut. So spermidine too is made in this little pharmacy called the gut biome. And it helps keep us in good shape as we age. Unfortunately, in the West, we have been overexposed to too many broad spectrum antibiotics that may have wiped out some of those colonies, those health-giving colonies, or decimated them. At the same time, we have this high processed food diet. So when you have a lot of white sugars and flours, that feeds other bacteria, which outcompete. So imagine you have a fixed number of houses in a neighborhood. When you're born, your mother populates that little neighborhood with some nice bacteria. But as we get older, some bad elements move into the neighborhood. And if we're feeding them sugars and white flours, well, guess what? The neighborhood goes to pot. And it's overrun with these bad bacteria. They run amok. They're throwing crazy parties. They're not making the wonderful happy hormones or the spermidine that we need to stay young. And that is then one of the reasons that we begin to notice things going wrong, like our hair falls out, or our hair turns gray earlier than our parents did, or our nails get very thin, or we get wrinkles earlier than some of our friends. We're not sleeping as well. Perhaps we notice other problems, memory, for instance, might go, right? Or maybe blood pressure goes up. All of these things can be helped by spermidine. And so keeping those levels up is important. And we are very reliant. If the gut biome's not working, we then have got to get it from food. And the foods that we can get it from won't come as a surprise to you. Lots of vegetables, mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms are a great source. Fermented foods, assuming people don't have too many allergies and can deal with a histamine load, then you would want fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, and then cheese. So for the lovely makers of the Cheddar Valley, actually cheddar cheese has high amounts of spermidine. Then again, if you're an autoimmune patient, maybe you can't do dairy, maybe you can't deal with histone protein. There will be something you can eat though. And in the longevity blue zones, to which you alluded earlier, they are eating copious quantities of foods with spermidine. So if we look in Okinawa in southern Japan, they have a fermented soy dish called natto. And they ferment it longer than the Japanese and the rest of the country. They ferment it for an entire year. It's very slippery, slightly slimy, some would say. It's got a very strong smell. But in fairness, I think Stilton cheese has a very strong smell and very strange mouthfeel. Same with this natto. And natto has huge quantities of spermidine in it. And the Japanese, these Okinawans, will eat it just a little bit every day. And you'll find people have just a little soy sauce dish of fermented vegetables before they start their meal. It's almost like a way to get those digestive enzymes going, right? And then they have, they have lots of other plant materials. So if we look at, say, the only blue zone in the United States in Loma Linda, these Seventh-day Adventists don't eat any meat. They're getting lots of plants, nuts, legumes. These are all sources of spermidine, legumes in particular, very high amounts. If we then go to Icaria in Greece, Sardinia in Italy, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, these three areas all have goat or sheep's milk cheese, which is interesting. And again, it's fermented and they're getting some spermidine there, but they're having also lots of plant material. So keeping spermidine levels up, keeping the fiber levels up to feed the bacteria, right? To keep the good neighbors in the gut biome fed and happy and, running the little pharmacy for us. We need that fiber. If you do these things, then you can actually maintain your spermidine level production. When you are 100, you can keep it as it was when you were 50. That's amazing.
Well, yes, that is amazing, and you've taken us on a real journey of geography, and also of culinary, inputs that certainly in the United Kingdom, is quite, some of it's quite foreign, apart from cheddar cheese, of course. So I suppose, this idea, everything so interconnected, how spermidines contributing to, or you said, both of you were kind enough to say the American and the British pronunciation there, autophagy and autophagy, which is probably what I might have said. And this, this idea of cells having a clear out on a regular basis, the cells rejuvenating themselves in a way. And that's, menopause is a time when we're starting to feel, some of us, a bit decrepit and thinking, oh goodness gracious me, what on earth can I do to feel better? For me, you talked about so many symptoms that I experienced: dry skin, hair. Well, it was more my eyebrows than my hair itself, but losing hair, really, all of the menopausal symptoms, the hot flashes, the insomnia absolutely drove me to distraction, fatigue. And yet, all of these symptoms we can potentially attribute to disruption of that gut garden that I love the way you describe it as a neighborhood, and mine, there's no doubt some undesirables have moved in into my neighborhood, honestly. And it's really challenging to unpick this, but as you've alluded to, there are things in our supermarkets that can support our gut health, and just getting a bit clever and smart about symptoms that you might be experiencing, and maybe keeping a diary of how you're feeling on a particular day, and what you might have done to contribute to that in the previous, it's not even one day, sometimes it's a couple of days, isn't it, that
Yes.
Yeah.
So, well, if we were to just look at insomnia, which is a really prevalent problem for women going through menopause, which feeds a vicious cycle, right? You talk about energy. If you don't get good sleep, just things don't work as they should. For one, that autophagic process, that self-renewal process, happens at night when we're fasting, right?
Yes,
it really kicks into high gear then. And let's think about memory and Alzheimer's. Do you know women are twice as likely to get Alzheimer's as men? And Dr. Dale Bredesen at UCLA Medical School says that one of the reasons why is because in our 40s, when we're busy, dealing with teenagers or young kids, and we're trying to take care of our elderly parents and hold down a job, we are under so much stress. We're using up all of our progesterone to make cortisol, the stress hormone, and this is at a time when our progesterone levels are declining anyway, because we're going into menopause. If we don't have progesterone, we do not sleep. But if we are not getting sleep, sleep is the only time when the different compartments of the brain actually shrink back, and these little rivers of cerebrospinal fluid actually flush out waste. We need that to happen. Otherwise, we set ourselves up for problems 20 years down the line. And so those memory and cognition issues are not really a surprise when we think about the fact that we don't get enough sleep. So spermidine is really interesting in that it actually helps decrease cortisol levels, and it increases progesterone. And that is so helpful. It's so fundamental. But spermidine also modulates 2 of the 8 clock genes. And they influence our circadian rhythm. So there's this funny thing that happens, and anyone with an elderly aunt or uncle knows that they just can't sleep at night. Both sexes. No, I can't sleep. Need the radio on all night, or, they're up reading a book or doing a crossword puzzle. They can't sleep. Their circadian rhythm gets very dysfunctional. Now, part of it is that they're not getting out first thing in the morning to get morning sunlight, which is so important to sort of set our body clock to make melatonin. We start making melatonin around 4 p.m. to set us up for that beautiful glide path into sleep around, we hope, 10, maybe 9, maybe even 8. Most of us override this. Netflix is too exciting. There are too many emails. Again, teenagers, parents, work, bills, taxes. It's a maelstrom of stress. And all those things will just upregulate the cortisol, eating up our progesterone, meaning we don't have the progesterone we need for sleep. And again, if we've missed that morning sunlight, we've already down-regulated our production of melatonin. Without the melatonin and the progesterone, we are wired and tired at night.
So, this cycle, everything being interconnected, the bidirectional nature of things, rest is increasingly being studied, isn't it, as life prolonging even.
Absolutely.
So it's important that we have the access to this information, and there are these things that we can do from dietary perspectives, lifestyle management, and I'm really passionate about lifestyle medicine as a whole. Breath practices, movement practices, as you say, out in the fresh air, getting the daylight in the morning, and managing stress and doing all these things. It can feel a bit like a full-time job sometimes when we're trying to do all these things. But the benefits, are there for the taking. And habits, making healthy choices, can become a habit. It can become a hobby, for those of us who are passionate about healthy practices. It's kind of my hobby. It's kind of my job. It's something that I'm fascinated to learn more about all the time. So I'm really grateful to you for coming along and and educating me about this new thing that I hadn't heard of, spermidine, and its crucial role. I suppose the Oxford Longevity Project is a passion project of yours,
It is.
and so I know that you've got some very auspicious professionals involved with this. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what's happening with that?
Sure. It's really part of my quest to get these scientific breakthroughs out of the lab and into the hands of clinicians and patients faster. IVIG, the therapy that I used as part of my healing journey, I still meet doctors who say, oh, I heard about it once in medical school, but I don't know anybody who's had this treatment in Britain.
Oh, wow.
It's so strange. And yet there are many, many more studies on its efficacy now. And I've calculated that I spent $24,000 US, but I saved over 1.1 million. And I didn't have to take all those drugs. So it's, for me, I want to get the information out. So we've had great speakers. Last year, we had Professor Kieran Clark. She invented exogenous ketones. Everybody's heard of the ketogenic diet. Why is it important? Well, our neurons can use ketones for fuel, even when the receptors are covered with a biofilm that prevents glucose from getting to our neurons. The receptors for ketones are always open. We are born in ketosis. We are created in ketosis in utero. We are born in ketosis. When we are breastfed, we are still in ketosis. And interestingly, at the end of life, if we need ketones, they still feel us. So she spoke. I thought that was great. We've got Sir Christopher Ball, who is a very inspirational, what would you say? He's in his 90s. I'm trying to think. He's not octogenarian. What is the next? What is the next one? Non-octogenarian, and very, very spry triple bypass patient who's raised over 2 million pounds for the John Radcliffe Heart Department. And he also still exercises, but he practices the Wim Hof method, cold therapy. He does breath work. He uses mouth tape because he doesn't want to be snoring at night. As a heart patient, you don't want to be snoring because of sleep. Sleep apnea is very bad for you. He is on a plant-based diet, and he's one of my co-founders, but he speaks. He spoke last year. He'll speak this year. He's very inspirational. I know your husband was in the military. He is a former paratrooper, now poet. So he will be there. Dr. Paul Chen, another one of my co-founders who is a cancer coach, has a PhD in cancer research, but is also a GP to several Oxford colleges. He's also involved. I am hoping that we will have Dame Frances Ashcroft, who is one of the university's leading experts on diabetes. And we know the cost of diabetes, but there are things that patients with prediabetes and diabetes can do to improve their situation and kind of take off some of this pressure on the NHS, which, we really have got to protect. So the next conference will be on Saturday, the 29th of June at St. Hilda's College, the University of Oxford. That's the College of the Suffragettes. So like them, we're following in their footsteps. It's very apt. And, we'll have punting, we'll have picnicking, we'll have breath work, we'll have movement, and we will have some great lectures. A fellow from the University of Birmingham, other folks, another neurosurgeon from the University of Oxford. And for those people who are a bit older, like me, actor George Hamilton, his longevity physician, Dr. Sandra Kaufman, will be speaking. She'll be flying in from Miami for this. She's written 2 books on how to age well. And, I think one of them is called Aging and what we can do about it. So I hope that, people will take the opportunity to come to Oxford, maybe stay at St. Hilda's overnight and join us for what will be a fun-filled day of discovery about the human body and what we can each do to improve our lot. And like I said, hopefully take off some pressure on the NHS.
Oh, well, you've really wound this conversation up beautifully with that. Thank you so much for coming along and sharing your passion for health and wellness and just helping us to thrive as we travel on our lives. It sounds like a fabulous event. I'll be adding it to my calendar, and definitely. And so thank you again so much for coming along. We'll have the links in the show notes so that people can access those. And so really all it's suffice for me to say thank you. Please check out Leslie's links in the show notes. Thank you for listening to this wonderful conversation. And please follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts and share this episode with a friend. Thank you so much, and take care, and it's bye for now.